Ahoy there, me hearties! This be Captain Silver Hook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank.
Hey everybody, it's Eric from the Two Old Pirates. Sorry, I've been away a little while, but school just started back up. It's been really busy. I just want to go ahead and say missed you guys, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. I'm going to be doing something new every now and then, and I'm going to be telling stories about my father when he served in World War II. This series is going to be called Echoes from New Guinea, a World War II Soldier's Tale. My father served in Papua New Guinea. That's the second largest island in the world, and it's just north of Australia. The Japanese had invaded the northern part, trying to work their way all the way through the island and then get the ability to go across and into Australia and take over Australia and have that as a main base to eventually try to attack the west coast of the United States, way before Midway or anything like that. So my dad served in World War II. He was in the United States Army. He was in the 2nd Engineer Special Brigade. They were responsible for explosives and landing crafts, and they're some of the first people sent in that would build bridges, roads in the dense jungles of New Guinea. Anyways, my dad never really ever talked about the war. He was one of those type of veterans that when they came back, they were told, get a job, raise your family. There was no real contest about PTSD or anything like that. There was severe shell shock with some soldiers, and those people had to be institutionalized or put on very new types of medicine. Most of the men that came back that fought and saw heavy battles never talked about it. They went about their life, and they suffered every single day with the nightmares that they had been through. My dad was one of those 14 to 15 million that went off to serve, along with his 2 brothers, my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So 3 generations served in World War II in their own capacity. My dad won 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star. But he never liked to talk about it. And the only time I'd ever hear him talk about it is if he had some beers in him. And if he drank some beers, every now and then he'd open up and let something slip. And I knew as a son how rare that was, so I grasped that nugget of information and I held onto it as tight as I could. I'm getting older, and I've told these stories to my sons, but I figured, what the hell? I'll put it on the podcast. If nobody watches it, nobody watches it. If you're a veteran, or if you love the United States, or if you're just interested in war stories, I guarantee you some of these will really kind of rock your boat. My dad was never braggadocio. He never sat there and said, yeah, I killed this person. Wasn't that way. But here it is. This first story in the series is going to be called The Japanese Pilot, and I hope that you enjoy. My dad was serving in New Guinea in 1943. He was 19 years old. And on a certain day, they were on the beach with the landing crafts. Some of you guys call them ducks or LCVs, different things like that. If you saw Saving Private Ryan, the landing craft that comes in, they drop the front stuff. My dad was a driver on one of those, besides many other things that he did with the Special Brigade. On this day, there was a huge dogfight going on in the sky. And if you don't know what a dogfight is, that's airplanes, shooting at each other and stuff. So Dad and his platoon watched a massive dogfight over their base on the coast of Papua New Guinea. It was 1943. The Japanese were still controlling a huge portion of the island. The U.S. forces were joined by Australian and New Zealand troops. As they sat there near the surf of the shoreline, they yelled each time that they saw a U.S. Corsair or a Mustang or a Lightning go after the Japanese best fighter plane, the Zero, or the Zeke as they called it, and would take one down. And every single time that they saw one of the U.S. planes go down, they just said a prayer. On this day, though, during this dogfight, a Zero got hit by a plane from behind, and It did not crash. It did not come in like how you see in the old theater, movie theater images and stuff like that. It glided down, almost like if you saw the movie Dunkirk. And it slowly hit the water with a couple bounces and came to a standstill. So the pilot did an amazing job to glide it to the ground. It was about, I would say, maybe 300 to 400 yards offshore, if I remember my dad correctly. So it wasn't way out there. So as they got closer, they saw the plane was bobbing, and they saw the pilot exit the cockpit and get out on the wing and was sitting there. So my dad and a buddy of his that had jumped in the landing craft, they went out there, and one of them had a carbine. My dad's driving, the landing craft out there. As they draw nearer and they cut down the engines so they could start drifting towards the plane, my dad raised his Springfield rifle because he had given away his Garand rifle. He traded to somebody for a Springfield rifle. In broken Japanese that my dad had learned, he yelled at the Japanese pilot, "Raise your hands or I'll blow your fucking head off." Excuse my language. Coming right back at him in perfect English, my dad heard this Japanese pilot say, "You don't have to worry about me." Perfect English. My dad and his buddy's jaws kind of dropped because all they'd ever heard is, "Hey, Joe, I'm injured, Joe." Just broken English. And this guy was speaking perfect English. "What did you say? How did you say that so clearly?" my dad said to the Japanese pilot. Japanese pilot smiled and said, "I'm from San Francisco, born and raised." My dad was perplexed, to say the least. They lowered their weapons and threw the pilot a cigarette and lighter. "What the hell are you doing fighting for the Japanese?" The pilot calmly sat there, enjoying his U.S.-made Lucky Strike cigarette. He proceeded to tell them how he had graduated from USC, University of Southern California, medical school, that he had been a doctor in San Francisco. After Pearl Harbor had happened, though, his family pushed him to go back to Japan, where his parents were from, as the loyalty that they had to the emperor was more important to them than him being an American and being a doctor. Overhead, the shooting and the attacks continued as the dogfight was still fully engaged. The plane was slowly sinking deeper into the water. The pilot talked about his favorite big bands and the dances that he used to go to back home in San Francisco, how he loved his town of San Francisco. He finished the cigarette and then pulled his pistol out. My dad raised his rifle again. "I told you, you don't have to worry about me." It's then that my dad realized the pilot was going to take his own life for the emperor. Tried to talk him about surrendering the gun, going home someday, saving lives as a doctor, that he had a calling. He was a smart man. Don't do this. The pilot listened to my dad intensely, never cutting him off. My dad finally understood how this brilliant man could never go home. Couldn't go back to Japan because he was a registered pilot, and if he had been captured by the Americans and turned back over, he would be a coward, and he would never earn his honor again. If he was to be captured by the Americans on that day and be turned back over at the end of the war and go back to San Francisco, any family members there would turn their back on him. My dad turned the landing craft around, started heading back towards the shore. "Thanks for the smoke. Hey, go to a dance for me when you get back home, okay?" The pilot yelled at my dad. My dad accelerated towards the beach, and then he heard the familiar sound of a pop. He fought to not look, but he ended up looking back, and he saw the U.S.-born San Francisco doctor slumped on the wing, blood splashed on the side of the cockpit. He chugged in the landing craft quietly back to shore. As soon as he got there and got out of the landing craft, everybody on shore said, "What the hell happened out there?" They had all been watching from shore. My dad simply sat down and watched the plane finally dip below the waves and take the pilot to the bottom. Off the coast of Lae, New Guinea, in the Huon Gulf, just two Americans on two sides of the war who came together for a short few minutes over Glenn Miller and a Lucky Strike cigarette. That's the true story of my dad. If you enjoyed this, please comment. If you're a soldier, if you're the spouse of a soldier, if you're the son of a soldier, and you have any stories that you'd like to, let me know that I could possibly tell for your parent or your husband or your son, I'll gladly do that. But I'm going to keep doing a couple of these because once I'm gone, these stories would fade. And that man who is at the bottom of that gulf, his skeletal remains, was a brilliant doctor from San Francisco who simply because of his belief system could not go home. And so he ended his life. And thank God my dad came home. With all the damage that was done to him, he was able to have children and raise a family and have somebody like me sit one day on a computer many, many years later, 80 years later, and tell the story of that young man who tried to save a Japanese pilot's life. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. I'll be back with another episode soon. Please comment. Please share. Please like. And please subscribe if you have not. Love you. Peace.